Good morning. So I believe the antitrust policy notice is the first thing to start our day. Switching over to that now. As always, we have an antitrust policy notice on our website, and if you have any questions about it, you can read the full policy there, and you can contact our counsel, Andy Updegrove, if you have questions that cannot be addressed by reading the document itself. We show this at the beginning of every call, just to make sure everyone is on the same page regarding where we're at with our discussions in the community. Now, I'm going to share the main screen, which is going to be covering our document today. For people who are new to this discussion, we are working on a security assurance document. We released version 1 of this guide in August of last year, and it essentially was a cut down version of the OpenChain ISO 5230 spec, which is designed for license compliance. As we revise this document, we're heading into a situation of saying, well, this is basically a specification. Let's call it a reference specification and take it from there. Today, we're looking and creating the third draft of this reference specification. Now, there are a couple of things that came up in the last call that we should begin to address immediately. One was that we should have explicit mention of continual monitoring in the document. We don't have that. And another was to essentially tie together how we reference SBOMs. If it's okay with everyone, we will touch the SBOM conversation first. Any objections?
No.
Okay, thank you. No objections, which is great. What I will do, just in case anyone wants to hop into the document itself, is I will put it in our chat. There's a link in the Zoom chat now. You can view the document. I'm going to take us down just a little bit on our document to the section about terms and definitions. I noticed that our term and definition 2.7, SPDX, is referenced there, but not in the actual specification itself, where we do talk about SBOM a little in the spec. So my suggestion is we redo the SPDX thing to make it about SBOMs and to focus on essentially what SBOMs are, and then reference SPDX ISO standard as an example. What do you think of that general approach?
So Shane, this is Prasad. First of all, thanks for scheduling this, and I think this is certainly very timely and useful. Considering our organization is currently going through some transformation, mainly for adoption of SPDX.
Yes.
So what you just mentioned, if I summarize, if I understand correctly, you are trying to get the SPDX more as generalized and used in the context of SBOM discussions. Is that what I'm hearing?
Okay.
Or is it more of a...
I'd go the other way around. Yeah, I'd go the other way around. I'd say that what I want to do is start with SBOM and then drill down to SPDX as an ISO standard. So here we mention SPDX straight off, but we haven't talked about SBOMs. So I was saying we might have it the wrong way around. And we talk about SBOMs here and reference SPDX. And then further in the document, when we talk about SBOMs again, people will know that they should look at SPDX as an example.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense, because SPDX, I think, as everyone knows, I mean, it's more of one of the samples. So obviously there are other standards available. So I think so. Yeah, absolutely, you are spot on in starting with a more generic entity like an SBOM, and then getting into a drill down into a specific example. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome, Prasad. And I think we're very lucky that SPDX became an ISO standard last year, because it gives us a really solid foundation to point at, and good timing with the executive order.
Yep, I agree. And I'm not sure, I think there's also recent adoption, report that, Linux Foundation had published.
Yes.
And I was seeing really great data points there that they have provided in terms of adoption of SBOMs in general across organizations. And also, to a certain extent, many of those adoptions, I would imagine, I think SPDX is certainly was used as the sample standards there, considering that SPDX has already got the certification.
Yes, I think we can say that SPDX is pretty much becoming the default choice, though, of course, we have to be amenable to allowing people to have other choices too.
Right. Makes sense.
Hi, Shane. This is Jan. In regard to this, would it make sense to also have some reference, for example, like an EG to Cyclone DX or something? Because then it's more open. It's giving an option to have something else, but it's just referring of the thing of it as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I have no particular objection to that at all. My only stance would be that it's useful to point at the ISO standard, where Cyclone is still a de facto standard and relatively new, which is why I didn't put it in the discussion there. But I have no fundamental objection to pointing to several.
From my point of view, it would actually also underline the openness here and put it into the sort of sample. Yeah, that's probably something. That's why I was thinking about if we have some also additional referrer.
It's a very good point. And certainly I believe Cyclone started in the security domain. So, it's on topic. Okay, now that we've kind of got consensus that this should start by saying SBOM and explaining SBOM before getting to examples, I wanted to pull us down to section 3.3.1, which is where we mentioned bill of materials. And maybe our weakness here was that the bill of materials is not referencing an SBOM, and I think we can fix that by basically making this software bill of materials and explicitly tying it back to our reference definitions. But I just wanted to check, what did you think about that? Okay, if everyone is kind of okay with that, I'm just going to put it in. Right. Yep. Prasad, I saw you're unmuted. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, no, I was just about to say that, yeah, I think software bill of materials, I think completely makes sense, especially in even in the context of NTIA's exec order, the minimal NTIA baselining talks about mainly with context with SBOM. So I think that certainly kind of bringing that context in, I think will be very helpful instead of referring to a given specific standard. So I think I'm all for this.
Excellent. Now
I wouldn't have even understood it differently.
I know. And I guess there's the argument that what about hardware bill of materials and so on, but I think we can say that's out of scope for us at the moment. We're just talking about software here. Right. Now we have a thorny challenge to cover, and I think this will probably go to security assurance. On our last call, we had Chris Wood who is experienced in the security domain. He's a Lockheed Martin fellow. And Chris pointed out that the security assurance is a little bit different from compliance assurance because it's about continual monitoring. Now, we sort of touch on this, but fundamentally, because we took this from OpenChain, which is license compliance, fundamentally, this is about a single point in time action point. And we need to somehow make it clear that your security assurance is ongoing. It's essentially a continual monitoring. And I just wanted to check if anyone has an idea for how we could say that, how we could express that. Just to be clear, express that in a way that made it clear we weren't just taking a snapshot on inbound and saying this is clean and then forgetting about it.
Shane, this is Jan. I think in this 3.1.5, I tried to add some remarks.
Okay.
And it's a bit about this section, but I'm not really sure whether you have they are in this document here. No,
They're not in this document.
Not. Yeah, I added them on the share on the GitHub share.
Okay.
And there I have put some thoughts into that direction, like adding a method for continuous and repeated security testing of supplied software and method to verify that identified risks will have been addressed. So we have two layers here. The one layer is addressing the activity of identification and repair, and the other one is the controlling mechanism that is taking care of this. That's exactly because I was thinking the same, that we read somehow a recurring procedure that is exactly ensuring that we have this sort of additional assurance. And the same I added into 3.3.2 or suggested there, where we have this section with if known vulnerability is present and so on.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so I'm going to pull those out.
Unfortunately, I was not very much sure on how to add this in the Word document, so I've added it more or less as comments.
No, comments are perfect.
Remarks
Comments are perfect. Yeah, I mean, the ideal is comments because we might make this into a standard at some point. So the minimum amount of final editor is better. So comments are great on the document. And then we can, have someone like myself or the chair of specification actually write it into the document. So we have minimal copyright assignments to do.
Okay.
I know. And essentially, that's because when we give it to, let's say, Joint Development Foundation, it becomes copyright of them. And then they give it to ISO and it becomes copyright of them. So it's a chain of custody. Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. We're going to dig into that. We're going to pull up your comments and we will, I'm just creating a branch with that. Yeah, we'll work on that. So I should have your branch active now, and let's see if it opens. GitHub is great in many ways, and I'm very glad we have it. Though at the same time, I do wish we had a simpler mechanism for dealing with Word documents and GitHub, and the fact that a lot of people only use something like this. Okay, I'm just switching now to our document with Jan's points.
So I think probably if we removed it, the document and go into text file before we move on with this Word documents. It might probably simplify,
Something like
but
that.
then we don't have the comment function.
Yeah, and we have a slight problem that some of our community participants are only like Word and PowerPoint users. Okay, but we've got your comments up now. Brilliant. Your understanding is the scope must be clarified. Yeah, the scope needs to be clarified. Good point. Here we go. Defining aims to allow the risk appetite under 3.1.4. That's a really good point. What are the metrics that would allow people to determine their risk? And honestly, I don't know if there's a standard set of metrics out there that we could use that's broadly applicable, or maybe we should just have an example. You know, example.
I'm open to add to search and find something, but at the moment while I was reading it, I was thinking that I mean, if you look into NIST specifications and so on, they also have always some sort of request for meat,
Yes.
building meat, sort of an improvement over time, or an impression how you. So I at the best metric to, and it can be how it looks. Think about in we have experience.
Your audio broke up a little bit there, I'm afraid. But I understand you were saying that in NIST, they essentially have a way of determining what's needed in the scope of the discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, from my point of view, I mentioned it's good to have a kind of a maturing approach, because you can say, okay, this is necessary, we have done something, we improved, we can go on improving.
Yes.
Without exactly saying what you want to improve, because this definitely depends on the risk appetite of the particular organization, you know.
Right, right.
Some organizations may have no problem with certain size, something on a different area. And if we would give a particular metric, probably focus them in a particular direction.
Yes.
And that's why I say it's good to have a metric so that it can improve over time, but it should be something that is organization specific.
Okay. This suggests that we might want to simply provide an example with a strong disclaimer that this is not intended to be canonical.
Good idea, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to add to your comment. Can I add to your comment? How does this work? Here we go. Okay. So you brought up an interesting point on 3.1.5. Is knowledge about known vulnerabilities institutionalized? And you point out that in most other places we talk about this, we expand on it, but here we jump into bullet points. So, I mean, all I can say is I concur. We need to introduce. Does anyone have an overview of, how you know about known vulnerabilities? Does anyone have text like that that we might be able to copy paste?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Oh, okay. You mentioned that is knowledge about known vulnerabilities institutionalized? In other topics, we introduce that with a few sentences, where here we talk about known vulnerabilities and just jump straight into it without a proper intro. So your suggestion was that we turn it into a few sentences to make it clear what we mean about institutionalized knowledge about known vulnerabilities. So I was just asking if anyone had boilerplate language we could use for that. Or
Okay.
I can draft an
I'll take
intro. Yeah.
What about the sentence that we just? I mean, we are on a requirements level.
Yeah.
So if we just take the sentence and extend it a little bit into something like the organization demonstrates a sound and robust handling procedure of known and software security development by defining and implementing the following procedures. And then we have, I think that would, and then we can follow up with the methods that we require.
Perfect. I'll just resolve the comments and I will action your sentence as the thing that we do. Brilliant. That's great. That's great. And you added a few ideas, highly recommended, a method for continuous and repeated security testing. Yes, that's exactly what Chris Wood pointed out that we were missing. And a method that verified the risks have been addressed before release of the supplied software. Absolutely. So I'm just going to say yes. Does anyone have any comments on that? It's here. If you've got no comments on that, we'll just assume everyone's cool. Oh, hi, Prasad.
One question I have is, again, it just crossed my mind, is when we are detailing this standard practice implementation around vulnerability reporting, do you think is it worthwhile to maybe show a potential sample system, like, where, I mean, I know some organizations, they designate or they choose certain internal as well as external references. So some organizations consciously have like an what they call like a threat intel function or threat intel department within themselves, and which constantly goes and hunts for these so-called known vulnerabilities, or sometimes zero-day vulnerabilities, and then they constantly share information within the organizations. And in some cases, the organizations actively seek out, so they have both automated as well as other means of constantly going and seeking out from standard sources, vulnerability information sources like NVD, for example, and constantly, pulls those information on a regular basis, and then that it gets used as basis for generating alerts for both internal and external customers. So I'm just kind of curious: is there like an example that we can provide for both internal and external references, and that kind of shows us more an active example for this practice?
I just noticed Dan was unmuted. Do you have something to reference there? If not, no worries. Prasad, I think you might have hit on something that we're missing, which is maybe the definitions section needs to be expanded with definitions plus examples to really set the context here. Because maybe in the document, we're pre-assuming that someone would actually know what continuous and repeated security testing is. And maybe we need to really define those before we get into the spec.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing is, I think, definitely the definition is very elaborate and does make sense in a generic context. But also sometimes, when you give us like a more of a specific example, people can relate to it, right? Because some of these organizations, they are probably doing it, and I know some of our both our organization and some of our partner organizations take different approaches when it comes to vulnerability reporting. But at least giving one or two of those examples in the context of vulnerability reporting might help.
That's
just kind of.
Yeah.
It's even. I think it's even one step more. You are already, and I think that's an important thing, which is currently not covered. It's about the vulnerability reporting. I mean, given we have solid security testing, and during this security testing, we find, for example, a vulnerability in a certain third-party component, and then our team is probably not in the own software, but in the supplied software that we are using, that we are implementing. We find vulnerabilities. And now we are in a situation that we are the ones, like the security researchers, that need to report something. And I think you touched the point that is currently not yet covered fully in this document. It's about how do I report vulnerabilities? We have the other way around, which is, I think, in 3. I don't know, but it was somewhere. Okay. I know we have covered it. But is it that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, what I meant is what you just mentioned is how do organizations build that feedback loop, right?
Right.
So, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, sometimes, organizations do use third-party components, and one too many times, these vulnerabilities are always, found in more than their proprietary code. It's always in third-party code, and how have that feedback loop constantly fed back into the system, and what are the sources, right? So there could be as I said, like both internal as well as external sources. So internal sources being there is a threat intel process which continuously goes and crawls the web, or due to several means of analysis and research, and finds a day zero vulnerability or an existing vulnerability, or go and actively seek on a regular basis an external source, like an NVD, for example, like National Vulnerability Database, here in the U.S. and things like that. I mean, how do they constantly seek that external source and then continuously keep building that feedback loop back into the product development organization, so that they can make the due diligence and they can correct those vulnerabilities, in the right way. They can, either address that in the right way, in whatever way it makes sense.
That's brilliant. That is the missing part, isn't it? The active participant, as opposed to the party which is reviewing, actually sending stuff back. Okay. You know what? There's a lot of material here to work on already. I was wondering to what extent it might make sense to wrap it up here. I integrate this stuff in the document and send around a clean draft for everyone's review by email. Oh, that's interesting. Jan, we can see your microphone symbol moving, but we have no audio from you right now. Yeah, it appears your audio is gone. Okay. What I'll do is I'll say that we appear to have a situation now where we have good information about what we do with SBOMs. We have good ideas about how the standard practice implementation actually creates a feedback loop. And there's quite a bit of document editing for me to do. So I suggest I edit the document and I send around a clean draft with our outstanding comments to the mailing list, and we pick it up there. And then we have our next call in 2 weeks, where hopefully the document will have progressed further. Is everyone okay with that?
Sounds good.
All right. I see Jan might have re-entered. Hi, Anne. We were just saying we're going to wrap up here, continue by email, and then in our call 2 weeks later, we should have some really solid progress to make decisions on. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for your time. I'm delighted that we got so much done in 30 minutes. There's a lot of editing for me. I will do my best, and I will swing back to you soon. Very glad that we're getting so much progress on security. The market will be pleased. Have a safe day, be well, and talk to you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.